In this video, we're going to attempt a mainline Arch install using the archfi script, which is a script that, although not an official method, allows for installation in a relatively automated fashion, so it doesn't require any particular skill. And, it's much simpler than doing a typical Arch installation. So this website right here is the GitHub page for archfi, and it'll tell you the commands necessary to use archfi, which is a script. We don't need to install or download anything from this website because we'll do that within Arch once we get the ISO up and running. We do, however, need the latest version of the Arch ISO, which you can get from this website right here. So we'll go ahead and fire up a virtual machine. So I'll use this script line here to download the archfi, this command to download the archfi script from GitHub. And then we'll just run the script. Then we pretty much just run down the list. So we want English. We want US for our keyboard. Disk partitions, we will do an automated partition. So our partition has been set up. Now we can take a look at that. This is a tool for doing manual partitions, but we'll just take a look and see what it created for us. Everything looks good other than the swap is set at 16 gigabytes, so it looks like it's using whatever the RAM is on the system. That's too large for a swap, so we will resize this to 2 gigabytes. You can pick, whatever works for you, makes sense for your system. I think the minimum is 512 megabytes for a swap. But I think 2 gigabytes is usually pretty good in modern systems. We'll go ahead and remove this main partition. And then we'll just make a new one to, new partition to take up the remaining amount of space. And that should be good. Now I'll write this. So that looks good, so we should be able to quit. I'll go back. We can select our partitions and install now. These should basically be selected to, as long as you did kind of the automated partitioning, it should kind of highlight the right ones to just click enter to, but if not, then you'll want to pay attention to what each of those partitions has been labeled as. But for our purposes, since we did basically automated partitioning other than resizing, we can just click OK on these. And that looks good. So we can format Yes. For boot, I'm going to use ext2 since this is a BIOS system is what it's set as for the virtual machine. If you have EFI, you'll want to use FAT32. If you're using BIOS, you can really use any of the above. For my primary partition, I'm just going to use ext4. It's a tried and true format. So we can go ahead and mount everything now. And we should be able to install. For the kernel variety, unless you have a very modern system, very new hardware, where you're not going to get drivers on the LTS kernel, I generally like to use the LTS. There's not much of a benefit of having the latest kernel out unless you have very new hardware that isn't going to be supported in the LTS kernel. And we'll go ahead and install the Linux firmware. I'm not going to install any of this. This is downloading and installing all the files that we just selected. Alright, so those files completed the installation. So we will press enter to continue. Now we will begin the configuration process. So we're going to begin by creating a host name. You can pretty much pick anything you want. I'll call it Archbox. I don't know, just to change it up. Set keyboard layout, again, US, or locale. English US. Set time, America, Denver. I'll do UTC. Set a root password. And we'll generate the fstab. Pick a bootloader. We'll take grub. We'll install all those. I think now you would have a full base Arch install, so if you didn't want to load up a desktop environment or wanted to pick kind of a little non-mainstream like Window Manager or something, you might want to just exit out now. But we'll go ahead and install a full desktop. We'll install pacman contrib. And we'll go ahead and install, we'll install yay. I think that should be good. We'll go ahead and go back. These are all items that you can choose whether to install or not at your option. I like NeoFetch, put that in there. I think the rest of that was good. Compression tools, yeah, we'll install all of those. Networking tools. That's fine. I'll just pick the default on most of these. Web browser. This is for your terminal-based web browser. Probably most people probably wouldn't want this, but if you do, I like links. Recovery tools, I'm not going to worry about that. Go back. And the LTS kernel. And you'd pick the standard kernel again if you had really new hardware and were worried about driver support. But I think generally most people like to run the LTS kernel. All this you should be able to pretty much leave as defaults. If you have an Intel CPU, you'll want the Intel microcode. If you have an AMD CPU, you'll want the AMD microcode. Again, I'll just use the defaults here. For sound, install your ALSA on Pulse to get your audio up and running. You might want Bluetooth. You may or may not want the equalizer. That's more if you want to access the sound settings within the terminal. And then if you want printer support, you would just install cups. I'll go ahead and do that. Since it's a VM, I really don't need it, but I'll go ahead and install the printer support. And enabling those processes to begin at boot. And I will go back. Go ahead and install the default Xorg components. For fonts, you probably want the Microsoft fonts. I like, I think those are the Google fonts that are designed to kind of mimic some of the more recent Microsoft fonts. Yeah, let's take the Ubuntu family. Start with that. You can always add them later if there's some other fonts that you're missing. Input drivers. The default should be fine for me. Video drivers. Here, you can either select the open source or proprietary. If you're running Intel or AMD, then you'll probably want these open source ones. If you're running NVIDIA, you'll want proprietary. Looks like the VirtualBox guest editions appear to be in the proprietary as well, so we'll go ahead and select that. Desktop environment, so they have it's like KDE, XFCE, GNOME, Cinnamon, LXDE, LXQt, Mate, Enlightenment, OpenBox, or Deepin. If you're wanting to use an alternative window manager, it's probably a good idea to get something light like OpenBox, or maybe LXQt or LXDE, something like that. XFCE might be a good option. For me, I'm just going to go ahead and pick GNOME. That's what I like. I like the full desktop experience. Another option if you want something more similar to Windows would be Plasma or Cinnamon. Deepin is that's kind of graphics intensive, very pretty. I've heard it's kind of buggy though. I've never personally used it. Mate is very popular, it's very Windows-like as well. But we'll use GNOME. Looks like it's selected everything already, so we'll just click OK. So if you pay attention here, you'll notice that the system's asking us if we want to set GDM as our login manager, which is what is, I believe, required for GNOME. So we'll go ahead and hit yes. This will start it at boot. For GNOME Extra, these are kind of all your add-on games and tools and so on and so forth for GNOME. I'll go ahead and install those too. Now I'll go back. Back again. Now, when you installed your desktop environment, if it did not install a display manager, you'll want to go ahead and install one now. Again, GDM was what you would use for GNOME, but it was already installed when we installed GNOME. SDDM for Qt, so that would be for Plasma. LXDM for LXDE, and so forth. But we should be good for our install with GNOME since it already installed that as a prerequisite. Applications, Office. We have the option of two different versions of LibreOffice, the Fresh or the Still. The Fresh is the newest one that comes out. But if you want a little bit more stability, you're better off using the Still version, so we'll go ahead and do that. Then it gives us some options for some spell check, and, thesaurus, and grammar check, hyphen rule options. Go ahead and install those. I'm going to select English US. English. English. Won't worry about these. Let's go back. Internet, so we have web browser options. I'll just pick Firefox. Yeah, we'll do Chromium too. Surprised it doesn't have Brave browser as an option, but you can install that after we get the system up and running. And here we have a BitTorrent option. Go ahead and install this GTK one since we're using GNOME. If you're using KDE, you probably want the Qt version. Email. Most people like to use Thunderbird. Go ahead and install it. You may not want to if you just use webmail, but we'll go ahead and load it on. There's English US. We'll take the defaults for GStreamer. Audio player, I'm not going to worry about that. Video player, yeah, VLC is the go-to one. It gives you an option for a simple screen recorder or a video editor. I won't worry about either of those. Burner tools, K3Bs or Bracero, those are both good ones, but I'm not going to worry about burning. I don't know that a lot of people have CD burners anymore. Go back. Graphics, I got GIMP, obviously a very popular tool. Go ahead and load that up. We'll get the help files. I'm not going to worry about any of the development tools. And I'm not going to worry about these system applications either. If you're wanting to do a virtualization, VirtualBox, obviously good options. Wine if you're wanting to do Windows emulation. And this is a GUI tool for installing packages. I would select whichever one fits your window manager. So in this case, GTK for GNOME, Qt, if you're a KDE. So we'll go ahead and go back. And back again. And we'll click on this config. And set our default text editor. I'll set that as Vim. Or you might want to do it as Nano, but whichever one you like. So it has some predefined aliases you can choose. This is what your system will show up on in Bash when you open up a terminal. I'll go with the full size one. I'm not going to bother setting up the firewall rules with the simple firewall. We do need to create some accounts though. Make a user called ST and set a password. There we can see our users that we created, so you can create multiple users if you need to. Or remove one of the users that you just added. Now we'll set up sudo for ST. We don't need to do that. I think that should be good. I think you just, I think all you had to do was just to add the sudo. Oops. So we should be able to go back now. System D, I don't think we need to worry about any of that stuff. I think it should have automatically taken care of it unless we wanted to add any processes manually. Don't think there's anything to deal with there. I think all that should be fine. Go ahead and go back. So it looks like really all you had to do here was make those bash preferences if you wanted to, firewall rules if you wanted to, but I would probably just wait and do that after the system's up and running. Create your new user accounts and set up sudo. I'll do back. And I think we can exit. And we'll go back again. And we should be able to unmount. We'll go back again, and we should be able to reboot now. We'll see if our system's working. So far this looks good, so we'll boot into Arch Linux. All right, and it looks like we have successfully installed GNOME. Here's the NeoFetch utility that we had installed earlier. And there you have it. We have mainline Arch installed, in a relatively easy manner. It wasn't too complicated. Just took a little bit of time to select the options, but it's a very easy way of getting Arch up and running. Hope that was helpful.